At some point, everyone has this moment. You check your account balance, not because you're about to spend, but because you need reassurance. You're not in crisis. You're not reckless. You're just uneasy. And that feeling, that quiet tension around money, is more common than people admit. Because most people aren't struggling with income. They're struggling with clarity. They don't fully understand why money feels unstable even when they're trying to do the right things. They don't understand why budgeting feels exhausting. They don't understand why saving feels slow. And they definitely don't understand why financial advice seems simple, yet rarely works in real life. That confusion isn't accidental. Almost everything you were taught about money focused on actions: earn more, spend less, invest early. But very little explained how money actually behaves once it enters your life. Money doesn't move logically. It moves psychologically. It reacts to stress. It responds to habits. It follows emotion before intention. And until you understand that, no amount of personal finance tips will feel sustainable. This is why two people can follow the same advice, read the same books, and watch the same videos, yet end up with completely different results. One feels constantly behind. The other feels quietly in control. The difference isn't discipline, it isn't motivation, and it isn't intelligence. It's how money management is structured around real human behavior, because money isn't just numbers on a screen. It's decisions made when you're tired. It's choices made under pressure. It's habits repeated so often they become invisible. That's money psychology. And when you don't understand it, money feels unpredictable, even when you're earning enough. Stay with me until the end of this video, because near the end, I'll show you something most people never realize about money, and once you see it, you'll understand why your efforts haven't been sticking. In this video, we're going to slow everything down and look at money the way it actually exists in real life. Not as theory, not as hustle culture, and not as quick fixes. We're going to unpack how money flows, why it leaks, and what quietly separates people who feel stuck from people who feel stable. Not overnight, not dramatically, but consistently. Because the goal of money management isn't to impress anyone. It's to create a life where money stops demanding your attention and starts supporting it. That uneasy feeling around money doesn't usually come from big mistakes. It comes from small, repeated moments that never get examined. A paycheck arrives, relief follows, then decisions start stacking up. Some are necessary, some are automatic, some are emotional, and none of them feel significant on their own. That's how money slowly becomes confusing. Most people think money problems are loud. Missed payments, debt collectors, emergencies. But in real life, money problems are quiet. They show up as hesitation at the checkout screen, as stress before opening banking apps, as a constant sense that you're one surprise away from being uncomfortable. This is where traditional money advice quietly fails. It assumes people make financial decisions in calm, rational moments, but real decisions are made after long days, after disappointments, after stress, after comparison. That's why copying someone else's routine rarely works. You can follow the same budgeting method, the same saving challenge, the same investment plan, and still feel like nothing is sticking. Because money management doesn't fail at the spreadsheet level. It fails at the behavior level. This is where money psychology matters more than numbers. Your brain treats money as safety before it treats it as strategy. When safety feels uncertain, every decision becomes defensive. You save inconsistently because you're afraid of missing out on comfort now. You overspend because relief feels more urgent than progress. You delay investing because uncertainty already feels overwhelming. None of that means you're bad with money. It means your system doesn't match your reality. Effective personal finance tips don't ask you to change who you are. They're designed around how you already behave. Think about how most people handle money in real life. They don't sit down weekly with detailed plans. They don't review every transaction calmly. They don't make decisions in isolation. Money decisions happen in motion, between meetings, between responsibilities, between emotions. So a system that only works when life is quiet will collapse the moment life gets loud. This is why earning more often fails to solve the problem. More income increases options, but it also increases complexity. There are more choices to make, more ways to spend, more expectations to manage. Without structure, more money just means more decisions. And decisions create fatigue. That fatigue is what causes people to drift, not failure. Drift is dangerous because it feels harmless. You don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. You're just reacting to prices, reacting to stress, reacting to what feels easiest in the moment. Over time, that reaction becomes a pattern, and patterns become outcomes. This is where clarity starts to matter more than motivation. Motivation fades. Clarity stays. When you understand why money behaves the way it does in your life, you stop blaming yourself. You stop chasing perfect discipline. You stop trying to force habits that don't fit. Instead, you begin to simplify. You begin to separate decisions that matter from decisions that don't deserve your energy. That's when money management starts to feel lighter. Not because money suddenly increases, but because confusion decreases. And when confusion goes down, confidence rises, even before results show up. That's the quiet shift most people miss. They think confidence comes after progress. But with money, confidence often comes before it. Confidence comes from understanding the flow, from knowing where money goes without checking constantly, from trusting that today's decisions aren't sabotaging tomorrow. That trust doesn't come from restriction, it comes from alignment. Alignment between how money moves and how real people live. And once that alignment begins, everything that follows, saving, investing, planning, stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling intentional. Once money starts to feel intentional instead of reactive, something subtle changes. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "What is this money meant to support?" That shift alone reduces dozens of unnecessary decisions. Most financial stress doesn't come from lack of income. It comes from decision overload, too many choices, too many trade-offs, too much second-guessing. When money has no clear role, every purchase feels like a debate. When money has structure, decisions become quieter. This is where real money management begins. Not with tracking every dollar, but with reducing how often you need to think about money at all. The best personal finance tips are the ones that remove friction. They make the right choice easier than the wrong one. They don't rely on willpower. They rely on design. This is also why people who seem naturally good with money rarely feel obsessed with it. They aren't more disciplined. They're less involved. They've reduced money decisions to a few moments that matter and automated or simplified everything else. That simplicity protects energy, and energy is what most people are actually short on. Money psychology plays a role here that's easy to miss. When decisions are frequent, stress rises. When stress rises, short-term thinking takes over. That's when progress stalls. But when decisions are limited and clear, the brain relaxes, and a relaxed mind is far better at thinking long-term. That's how consistency is born, not from pressure, not from guilt, but from ease. Ease doesn't mean laziness. It means alignment. And alignment is what allows small actions to repeat without resistance. That's when money starts moving forward, quietly, steadily, even when life isn't perfect. When progress starts to feel steady, it's usually because money has stopped competing with everything else in your life. It's no longer fighting for attention against work, family, stress, or expectations. It has a place. And things with a place stop creating noise. This is where many people misunderstand financial improvement. They think progress should feel dramatic, they expect visible wins, fast changes, clear milestones, but money rarely works that way. In real life, progress shows up as fewer emergencies, less hesitation, more breathing room. Those changes are easy to overlook because they don't announce themselves, but they matter more than numbers. This is why focusing only on outcomes, net worth, balances, returns, can be misleading. Outcomes lag behind behavior. If your money behavior is calmer today than it was last year, your outcomes are already improving, even if the numbers haven't caught up yet. This is a critical idea in money psychology. People abandon good systems because they don't feel rewarded quickly enough. But financial systems aren't designed to excite you. They're designed to protect you. Protection looks boring. It looks uneventful. It looks like nothing happening. And that's exactly the point. When nothing is going wrong, the system is working. This is also where comparison becomes dangerous. You see others posting progress, wins, upgrades. You assume you're behind. But what you're really seeing is timing, not stability. Money management isn't about moving fast. It's about staying upright when conditions change. And conditions always change. Those who stay consistent don't do anything extreme. They simply avoid undoing their own progress. They don't chase every opportunity. They don't react to every fear. They don't abandon systems because they feel slow. They trust that direction matters more than speed, and that trust compounds, just like money does. As that trust builds, your relationship with money starts to change in a quiet but important way. You stop treating money as something that needs constant fixing, and start treating it as something that needs consistency. This is where many people get confused. They think better money management means paying more attention, watching balances daily, monitoring every move. But attention isn't the same as control. In fact, too much attention often creates anxiety, and anxiety leads to poor decisions. Real control comes from predictability. When you know what your money will do before it arrives, there's less room for stress. You don't panic when expenses show up. You don't feel pressure to react immediately. You don't feel the need to catch up. That predictability creates space. Space to think long-term. Space to make calm choices. Space to focus on things that matter more than money. This is one of the most overlooked personal finance tips. Money should support your attention, not consume it. Money psychology plays a quiet role here. When money constantly demands your focus, your brain stays in survival mode. But when money runs in the background, your brain shifts into planning mode. And planning mode is where growth lives. This is why people who feel financially stable often describe the same thing. Not excitement, not pride, but relief. Relief from constant calculation. Relief from second guessing. Relief from feeling behind. That relief doesn't come from having enough. It comes from knowing your system won't collapse under pressure. And once that feeling appears, you become far less likely to sabotage yourself. You don't rush decisions. You don't abandon progress for comfort. You don't undo months of effort in a single moment. Because money no longer feels fragile, it feels handled. When money feels handled, your behavior changes before your balance does. You pause more often, not out of fear, out of awareness. Small decisions stop feeling small, not because they're forbidden, but because they're intentional. This is where real money management separates itself from advice. Advice tells you what to do. Understanding changes how you decide. You don't need reminders to save. You don't need pressure to be disciplined. You don't need motivation to stay consistent. Your system carries that weight for you. This is why lasting progress rarely comes from dramatic changes. It comes from removing friction where mistakes usually happen. Late night spending, stress-based decisions, impulse upgrades. Those moments don't disappear, but their impact weakens when money already has direction. That's money psychology at work. When the brain senses stability, it stops reaching for relief. And relief-seeking is what drains most accounts. People who feel financially steady don't have fewer desires. They just don't act on every impulse. Not because they're stronger, but because their environment doesn't constantly provoke them. This is a powerful personal finance tip most people miss. Design beats discipline every time. When your system is designed well, good behavior becomes the default. And when good behavior repeats quietly, progress becomes inevitable. As progress becomes more consistent, another shift happens that most people don't expect. You stop chasing reassurance. You no longer need to constantly check balances, compare strategies, or search for new advice to feel okay. Not because you know everything, but because you trust what you've already put in place. That trust changes how you respond to uncertainty. Unexpected expenses don't feel like threats. They feel like part of the landscape. Market swings don't feel like emergencies. They feel like background noise. This is where money psychology shows its full impact. When your financial life feels fragile, every surprise feels personal. When it feels stable, surprises feel manageable. That emotional difference is what keeps people moving forward, or pulls them backward. Many people mistake confidence for optimism, but confidence with money is closer to realism. It's knowing that not every month will be perfect. Not every plan will go exactly as expected. Not every decision will be ideal, and still being okay. This is why long-term money management isn't built on strict rules. It's built on flexibility within boundaries. Boundaries protect you. Flexibility keeps you sane. When both exist together, you stop oscillating between extremes, saving aggressively one month, undoing it the next. Instead, progress becomes steady. Not impressive, not flashy, just reliable. And reliability is what allows time to do its work, because time doesn't reward intensity, it rewards consistency. As reliability sets in, money stops being something you wrestle with and starts becoming something you coordinate. You begin to notice patterns instead of problems. Where pressure usually shows up, which moments tend to trigger unnecessary decisions? Which choices actually move things forward? That awareness is subtle but powerful. It allows you to intervene early, not with restriction, but with preparation. This is where money management becomes proactive rather than reactive. Instead of fixing mistakes after they happen, you shape the environment so fewer mistakes occur. You space out decisions that usually collide. You simplify areas that used to cause friction. You remove urgency from moments that don't deserve it. Those changes don't feel dramatic. They feel sensible. And sensible decisions compound faster than emotional ones. This is also where many people finally understand a core truth about personal finance tips. The best ones don't demand attention. They quietly reduce the number of times money interrupts your life. Money psychology supports this shift. When the brain expects stability, it stops scanning for threats. When it stops scanning, it conserves energy. And conserved energy gets redirected toward planning, toward patience, toward long-term thinking. That's when money stops feeling like a constant concern and starts behaving like a background system. Not exciting, not dramatic, just dependable. And dependability is what allows progress to continue even when motivation fades. When money becomes dependable, your priorities sharpen. You start to see the difference between what feels urgent and what actually matters. Urgency demands action now. Importance rewards patience. Most financial mistakes happen when those two get confused. A purchase feels urgent because emotions are loud. A plan feels optional because its benefits are quiet. But once money management is aligned with reality, you stop reacting to volume. You respond to value. This is where personal finance tips finally make sense. Not as rules to follow, but as tools to deploy selectively. You don't need to optimize everything. You need to protect a few decisions from chaos. Which expenses are predictable? Which savings are non-negotiable? Which investments are meant to be left alone? When those are clear, everything else loses its power to derail you. Money psychology explains why this works. The brain handles complexity poorly under pressure, but it performs well when choices are limited and defined. So instead of trying to master money, you narrow the field. Fewer decisions, clear boundaries, longer time horizons. That's how financial confidence grows quietly, not from constant effort, but from reduced interference. And when interference drops, progress becomes easier to sustain, even during busy seasons, even during uncertainty, even when motivation dips. That's the point where money stops being a project and starts being infrastructure, something you rely on, not something you manage every day. When money becomes infrastructure, it quietly changes how you think about the future. You stop planning in bursts. You start planning in layers. Short-term needs no longer threaten long-term goals. Long-term goals no longer feel distant or abstract. They coexist. This is where many people realize something important. Financial stress was never constant. It was cyclical. It spiked when decisions collided, when timing was tight, when too many things demanded attention at once. By smoothing those cycles, money management becomes less about control and more about rhythm. Income arrives. Money flows. Priorities are handled. The rest waits. That rhythm reduces friction. And reduced friction is what allows good habits to repeat without force. This is also why extreme strategies rarely last. They demand constant vigilance. They leave no margin for error. They assume life will cooperate. But life doesn't. Effective personal finance tips are built with interruption in mind. They expect delays. They absorb surprises. They bend instead of breaking. Money psychology supports this approach. When systems feel forgiving, people stick with them. When systems feel rigid, people abandon them the moment pressure rises. Staying consistent doesn't require intensity. It requires tolerance. Tolerance for imperfection. Tolerance for slower progress. Tolerance for months that don't look impressive. That tolerance is what keeps momentum alive. And momentum, once established, is far more powerful than motivation ever was. As momentum settles in, something else becomes clear. You stop measuring success by speed and start measuring it by resilience. How well your system holds up when things don't go as planned. How little damage a bad month can actually do. How quickly you recover without panic. That resilience is what most people mistake for being good with money. But it's not talent, it's preparation. Money management at this stage isn't about growth first, it's about durability. Durability keeps progress intact long enough for growth to matter. This is why many people with solid personal finance habits don't talk much about money. They're not chasing validation, they're not proving anything. Their system doesn't require attention to keep working. Money psychology explains this calm. When the brain no longer associates money with danger, it stops demanding constant reassurance. And when reassurance is no longer needed, focus shifts outward, toward work, relationships, health, and time. That's when money finally takes its proper place. Not as a goal, not as a threat, but as a tool quietly doing its job. When money becomes a tool instead of a concern, perspective widens. You begin to notice how many choices used to be driven by fear. Fear of falling behind, fear of missing out, fear of making the wrong move. As that fear fades, decisions gain patience. You wait more. You rush less. You choose with context instead of impulse. This is where money psychology quietly reshapes behavior. The brain stops scanning for immediate relief and starts prioritizing continuity. Continuity is powerful. It allows plans to survive bad weeks. It keeps progress intact through distractions. It prevents one mistake from undoing months of effort. Money management here feels less like management and more like maintenance. You're not constantly adjusting. You're checking alignment. And alignment is easier to preserve than momentum. This is why lasting personal finance habits rarely feel intense. They're steady. They're repeatable. They leave room for life. When systems leave room, people stay with them. And staying with something long enough is what finally allows results to surface. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but clearly. When clarity replaces confusion, money stops being something you fight and starts being something you steward. You no longer expect perfection from yourself. You expect consistency. And that expectation alone removes pressure. Progress becomes something that unfolds, not something you chase. You don't need to win every month. You need to stay in motion long enough for direction to matter. That's what real money management looks like in everyday life. Not constant optimization, not dramatic leaps, but quiet alignment between how money moves and how real people live. When personal finance tips are grounded in reality, they stop feeling like rules and start feeling supportive. And when money psychology is understood, behavior changes without force. You begin to trust your system. You allow time to do its work. You stop undoing progress out of impatience. That trust compounds, not just financially, but emotionally. Because financial growth isn't only about numbers increasing. It's about stress decreasing. It's about decisions feeling lighter. It's about knowing tomorrow won't erase today. If this video helped you see money differently, if it brought clarity where there was tension and direction where there was uncertainty, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video and can continue growing with us. Because understanding money is not a one-time lesson. It's a skill that strengthens with time.